A 90s Honda Civic is one of the most enjoyable cars you can ever own. Anyone who says otherwise is just wrong. These charming little things are delightfully simple, they're incredibly reliable, and they've got a huge following all across the globe. They're pretty much the perfect enthusiast car in my eyes, but before you part with your hard-earned pennies, and you're going to need quite a few these days, there's a few things you should look out for. My name's Jason, welcome to the Driver's Den. First up, let's talk about the engines. Most Civics came with a D-Series single cam. There's loads of varieties of these, but they're all identifiable by specific codes. And once you know what you're looking for, it's quite easy to understand them. So, this being a D14A4, for example, if I put a decimal point after the first digit, it'll tell you the displacement. So D14, 1.4. You'll also find some D13s, D15s, and D16s, depending on where you are in the world and what model you're looking at. Traditionally speaking, the D-Series gets a lot of flack being the poverty spec option and the less performance-oriented one, but I wouldn't let that stop you because these things are still fun, they're ridiculously reliable, and they're more cost-effective. So don't be an engine snob, the D-Series is still awesome. That being said, if you're looking at a rarer or a more performance-oriented model like the Civic Jordan or the EK9 Type R, then that'll come with a B-Series. These dual cams are far more desirable than one of these, but they're also far more expensive as a result. They're actually so desirable that people would take them from other Hondas and put them into D-Series Civic shells, along with K-Series engines and even sometimes H-Series engines as well. So it's really not uncommon to find ones that have been swapped. Chances are, no matter what Honda engine you find in the Civic, whether it's a D-Series, a K, a B, a J, an F, whatever it could be, chances are it will be reliable and it'll conform to Honda's usual standards. But you should have your wits about you and make sure you're not buying an absolute lemon. So make sure it's got oil in it, make sure the coolant's not milky, and make sure it's not blowing blue smoke out the back of the exhaust. That implies it's burning oil, which is probably one of the more common Honda engine faults you'll find out there. It's a known thing that these things burn oil, but keep your eyes peeled for that. If it's had an engine swap, you should also look out for some shoddy craftsmanship, so poor welding, terrible looking wiring, that sort of thing. The last thing you want to do is buy somebody else's failed project with a load of gremlins that you can't fix, so keep your eyes peeled, but you should be okay. Next up, let's discuss gearboxes. If you want the quick answer, manuals are obviously better. They're more enjoyable, they're more engaging, and they're the better option if you want to squeeze as much power as you can out of these underpowered engines, like mine for example. But a lot of manual examples have already been owned by enthusiasts. Some of them would have looked after the car like it was their child. They would have pampered it, given it everything it needs, and really taken care of it. Others, who have just bought a cheap manual Civic, might have ragged the daylights out of it. There's a chance that you're getting something that's been abused, something that's on higher miles, and something that has a bit more of a tatty shell. Whereas, here's my curveball for you. If you go for an automatic, chances are it's been owned by Doris and Richard, who go to Tesco's once a week, they merge onto dual carriageways at 40 miles an hour, and they don't really travel further than, I don't know, 4 miles. If you buy an auto, chances are the shell will be cleaner, the interior will be mint, the car itself would have been better looked after, and it'll be on lower mileage. For example, I bought my automatic Civic from a lovely older couple who were getting rid of it because it was too difficult to get in and out of. It was on 50,000 miles, the interior was mint, and the shell was very tidy. The autos also aren't that bad. They're slower, and they're not quite as rewarding, but they're fun, and they're cheap. So, weigh up your options. Next up, we'll talk about the steering and suspension. Ultimately, this just boils down to general maintenance and the age of the car. These things are 30 plus years old now, so it's wise to expect that the bushes have deteriorated, CV boots are probably close behind, and it's also worth expecting the alignment hardware to be seized as well. When I bought mine, for example, the rear trailing arm bushes were non-existent, and it made a terrible knocking noise every time I went over a bump. I went on eBay, replaced the arms, and I've not had any problems since. But it's worth factoring in, especially into your budget. If you're looking at buying one of these, you should allow a few pennies just to fix it up afterwards. And now, we're on to the big one, rust. Aside from teenagers sending these things into ditches, the biggest killer of Civics and any Japanese car, at least here in the UK, is rust. Unfortunately, there's quite a few areas you need to check on these, including the spare wheel wells, the floors, and even in the engine bay. I say this because sometimes debris like wet leaves and mud can pile up under certain components in the engine bay and rust it from within. Under my airbox, for example, is a lot of corrosion, and that's simply from dried leaves sitting there, collecting water and then rusting over the years. The big ones though are the sills and rear arches. These ones are detrimental and they will kill your Civic if you don't sort them or catch them in time. If you see bubbling like this, it's safe to assume there's rotten metal nearby, and that can be quite expensive. I've had both my arches redone and I've had the jacking points reinforced, and it's something you really have to factor into the cost because rust is inevitable on these. My advice for the bodywork on these is quite simple, to be honest. They've been through a lot. Chances are they've seen some touch-ups, some filler work, some repaints, some rear arches, for example. That's not necessarily anything bad. You need to look out for poor craftsmanship though. Things like poor filler work, poor paint work, and especially dodgy panel gaps. This could suggest it's been crashed in the past, and the last thing you want to do is to buy a car that's as straight as a banana. Unless you manage to find a unicorn, chances are you're going to encounter some modifications. Again, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, it just depends what they are and how they were done. For example, if you go and view a Civic and it's got chopped springs, rattle can bumpers, and eBay's finest hot air intake in the engine bay, it might not have been loved as much as some of the other examples. Whereas, if you find a nice example that's got a tasty set of wheels, it's been lowered subtly on a quality set of coilovers, and let's say it's got a stainless steel exhaust, that one might be the better option. You should also make sure that the workmanship's been done well. Fitting modifications to these things is quite easy, they're kind of like adult Lego, but cowboys will be cowboys and you don't want to take that risk. So look out for things like bad wiring, poor craftsmanship, and mismatched hardware. I totally didn't forget to film this the other day, and I'm definitely not squeezing it in now, but history and paperwork. I don't think you should expect that much with these. These cars are quite old. Chances are some of it's just been lost between the owners, that's been misplaced, and any service history from 20 years ago isn't really relevant nowadays. You want to make sure that it's been well maintained within the last 5 years or so, oil changes, whatever it's needed, consumables, that sort of thing. But ultimately, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't have much history. My S2000 didn't have much history, my Civic had some history, but nothing recent, and it's been fine, so there you go. On top of everything that I've already mentioned, you also need to make sure that you are prepared to own an old Honda. There's very little technology in here, there's very little in the way of driver aids or comforts, and they're not exactly the most luxurious experience. So, if you're looking for cruise control and a nice infotainment system, good aircon, a Civic might not be for you. But if you fancy the enchanting musk of an old Japanese car and you want to fly about in a tin can, then a Civic is right up your street, and I highly recommend you get one. So there we go, that's my advice to anyone looking at buying a 90s Civic. Don't rush into it, bring a mate with you when you go and look at one, and don't pull the trigger on the first one you see. These things are getting rarer, yes, but you don't need to rush into the wrong one. If there's any fellow Civic owners out there, drop some knowledge in the comments below. We'll try and help as many people as we can. After all, that's what this community is all about. And if you've enjoyed today's video, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. It would make my day and it helps me make better content as well. So thank you very much for watching. Take care. Oh, God, that fucking bonnet latch just went straight up my arse. Oof, didn't like that.